All right, good to see everybody. Glad you're with me for Reconstruction U today. We're doing 5 days of Reconstruction where I share from my coaching curriculum and through what I do as Pastor Paul. And some say, why do you say snide things, Pastor Paul, about evangelicals? And part of it is I just do enjoy watching evangelicals lose their shit a lot. I think it's kind of fun to watch, but also because I think what evangelicalism teaches is extremely destructive to human beings. And so while many of us are in the deconstruction space these days, I also want to talk about reconstructing you. My curriculum for my coaching is Reconstruction You. And so for 5 days, I'm going to be teaching about what I see as reconstructing from terrible theology and religious teaching that many of us have had through our lives. And so today I want to talk about some of the theologies that are really destructive, like the depravity of man, original sin. I'm not going to go deeply into the theologies, but how these destroy people and why I see something different to be lived out. So welcome, come on in and join me. Let me know where you're joining from. And I'm glad to chat with you today, and also going to tell you about my new coaching cohort that's starting up as I eat my snack from lunch. Hi, Jamie. Hi, Sherry from South Carolina. I have a friend moving to South Carolina. So glad you guys are here. And first, I always like to start off with just being aware of who you are and honored by who you are, and that you would take time to hang out with me. So in our Reconstruction U discussion today, I want to talk about the importance of loving ourselves. So a religious guy approaches Jesus and he says, how do I inherit eternal life? Jesus doesn't say, you get on your knees and say a sinner's prayer. He doesn't say, you join the religious system that I'm a part of. You go to the temple and you pay your tithe. And no, he said, how do you see you inherit eternal life? And the man says, well, you follow the two major laws, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, great, you got it. Congratulations, love it. And started to move on. And the guy thinks, wait a second. Jesus never agrees with our religious beliefs, which is what the evangelicals would say about Jesus too. Why does he never agree with us? And the guy thinks, Jesus never agrees with our beliefs. So why would he agree with me now? This must be a trick question. And the man says, so let me ask you another question. If the command is to love my neighbor as myself, then who is my neighbor? Which was a major religious argument of the day. And Jesus doesn't say your neighbor is the person you help down at the homeless shelter. It's not the person that lives across the street. It's not the person that every Sunday sits 3 chairs down from you. Jesus tells the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, if Jesus were to tell a similar parable to port that into our culture today, he wouldn't tell the parable of the Good Samaritan, because religious people who hate other people would very easily be able to say, well, I don't hate Samaritans, so I'm good. Jesus would tell the parable today of the good Islamic fundamentalist. He would tell the parable today of the good Democrat. He would tell the parable today of the good abortion provider. He would tell the parable today of the good undocumented immigrant. He would tell the parable today of the person that the good trans women's athlete. He would take the most hated person in culture for the religious, and he would make them the hero of the story. Because the truth is, what that man was saying is, how can I qualify my love to get to heaven without having to love everybody? So how can I qualify who my neighbor is? And the reason that he did that is because this was the belief that you needed to follow a religious system to be able to get eternal life. And the reason you want to follow a religious system to get eternal life, to follow a legalistic code of rules and lifestyles, is because then you can measure yourself as better than somebody else and say, good, I made it. And so when you are living in that space of religious law being your determiner of whether you get to go to heaven or not, that is because you're failing to understand the value of loving yourself. The command of Jesus is love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And so implicit in that command is a command to love yourself. And when you see hateful people who cannot love a transgender person or an undocumented immigrant, that's because somebody is struggling to love themselves. And so they have to measure their goodness by measuring against somebody who's worse than they are. And that's where a legalistic code becomes very important. So if we want to change that system and find ways to start loving selflessly one another in this season, then we have to be able to love ourselves. And some would say, well, no, my theology says that I'm a sinner because Adam sinned. So I'm just born a sinner. I can't do anything good without Jesus in me. Or would say I'm the depravity of man theology. We are born to do terrible things. It goes against basic reasoning and a lot of other things. So let me tell you what this looks like to be in another story. When you go on an airplane and you're getting ready to go on a flight and the flight attendant stands up and begins to give that pre-flight spiel, what does that flight attendant say? When the oxygen mask comes down, deny your flesh because your flesh is not able to do anything good. Make sure you deny your flesh, put yourself aside, and find some deed to do to make yourself look righteous so that you can be good in the situation. No, the flight attendant does not say that. What does the flight attendant say? The flight attendant says, put on your oxygen mask first before you try to help anybody else with theirs. Well, isn't that lacking care for others? Isn't that not following the rule to deny your flesh because your flesh is evil? No, it's an understanding that if I don't have resource to take care of me and make sure that I am refreshed and renewed, then good things cannot flow from me. I cannot help others. And so if I am in a religious system where I worship a hateful, ugly God who loves to find trans kids that he can despise, that God is also going to find reasons to despise me, and loving myself becomes very difficult. But if I start to redefine my identity by the sozo offered through Jesus Christ in John 3:17, that God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to sozo it, to reconcile its relationship back to heaven and to the divine. In other words, to point humanity back to who they were at creation before this legalistic law and religion was created. Then salvation can come through human beings. In other words, as when I realize that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that I am an amazing creation that is also seated in heavenly realms at the moment, then amazing stuff can flow through me to others. I can love my neighbor as I learn to love myself. And so this is what is so important to me in coaching with people, because if I don't have a core identity that tells me I'm good and I deserve good things to happen, then goodness in me and goodness that comes to me then comes through comparison with goodness that happens to others. And now I become political because I need to win to make myself feel good. I need to impose power over you and show myself that I'm better than you. But if I believe in the inherent goodness of human beings, that doesn't mean human beings don't do bad things, that we need to say don't do that. But if I don't believe in the inherent goodness of me and the inherent goodness of you, then life becomes a competition. We become then human doings, not human beings. We are measured in our goodness by what we do, not by who we are with inherent value. But when we begin to tell ourselves a different story, our mom may have told us we were lazy or ugly. Our dad may have told us that we're not good enough and we don't live up to expectations. And so we craft a self-identity story. Our religion tells us that we're dirt, filthy rags, unworthy to stand and look God in the face. Everything heaps shame upon us, that religious shame again and again. God is looking for a reason to leave you behind when the rapture comes. That shame piles up and our core identity story begins to be, I'm bad and I need to become a human doing to find ways to prove my value so that I can look good. And even if I feel like shit on the inside, Christianity gives me the ability to cover my face and say, well, Jesus took care of it. I'm able just to forgive and forget. Like every worship song Ellie says on YouTube. I'm able to look good. And so if my core identity is shit, but I look good on the outside, I am then a good Christian. But that's not what Jesus said, is it? He said we love our neighbors as ourselves. And that ability to love, our relationship with God, is measured in love, in our ability to love our enemies, right? Jesus said to the religious people, if you only love those who look like you, then you don't love God, because even the tax collectors, even the worst person in culture loves their family. Even Hitler loved his children. Loving your children, making sure they have an inheritance, doesn't show you value and are related to God. It shows that you are able to love people close into you, but being able to love people who don't look like you, that is the demonstration of how your relationship is with God. At least that's what the Bible says. Many of my Christian friends don't follow the Bible anymore, so that those words don't matter much to them now. They follow a religion that's based in Pauline writings rather than in the teachings of Jesus Christ. That's my little dig. So I do coaching for emotional and spiritual well-being for a lot of people who have deconstructed their beliefs and now are trying to work through and renew their belief system to say, okay, I don't think what I learned as a Christian is true. So how do I start to walk in relationship with heaven, in relationship with the wonderful story of Jesus, the Jesus that I knew, when I don't look like those people who call themselves Christian today? And that is, we have to start to recraft that core identity story. We have to start to say, I was taught that I am a terrible being because I am human and I am flesh. And we have to start to say, no, there is incredible potential and value in you. And you did bad things because all of your tools to believe in yourself and believe you were worthy of goodness were taken away. And so you had to find unhealthy means, because as humans, we will always fight to make sure that we have safety, that we have value, and we have purpose. And if healthy tools are removed from those by our parents, by authority figures, by our religion, then we will find unhealthy ways to do it. It's like Romans says that the law creates sin; it doesn't create help for sin. So when we take away healthy views of sexuality, then sexuality is going to find its way out of us in secret. So that's where, pornography addictions come from, and things that are really unhealthy ways rather than healthy views of sexuality. So religion quite often very much takes away an ability to look at sex in a healthy manner, because sex, we can only whisper and it can only happen, in a monogamous marriage. Totally missing the fact that the Bible is one of the most sex-filled books that we could ever find out there. And So we get a really unhealthy view of sexuality. And there's something inside of us saying, oh, there is this sexuality that needs to be expressed through me. So I will do it by closet cross-dressing. I'll do it by, going to a Christian conference and renting pornography in the hotel room, and all of the things we know that happen out there. And I was reading some statistics about all of this about Christians. They did a study in 2016. They did this in the Air Force, and they were trying to determine if being a Christian made you less likely to unalive yourself. And what they found is, yes, being a religious person or a Christian does make you less likely to perform the act of unaliving yourself, if I can say that to stay happy on TikTok. But what they also found in the study is that a Christian is much more likely to ideate about suicide than a non-Christian. So Christians often have the view of themselves that I don't want to live anymore, but they won't go through with it because the terrible theology of hell may keep them from it. And you may say that's good, but what we see again is the theology of Christianity creating a very unhealthy emotional and spiritual life that we just put a nice Jesus facade over and tell everybody I'm good. If I'm struggling emotionally and health-wise, I will just read my Bible and pray more so it'll get better. So one of the things that happens then when we don't love ourselves, again, we become a human doing, not a human being. We've got to find some way to prove our goodness now because our goodness has been taken away by our religious belief system. Our belief in our inherent value has been stolen by a pastor telling us we're sinners and that nothing good can come through us except through Jesus. And so we have to find ways to make ourselves look good so that we get an external bump that we are good. And so that means we will do homeless feeds. We'll do backpack drives in the school. We'll go down on Thanksgiving and give out food at the local shelter, which, by the way, I bet your local shelter says, we don't want you to come on Thanksgiving. We have plenty of help on Thanksgiving. Come the other 364 days a year if you really care about people, Christians. So we'll do acts. And I had this happen to me this week. I had somebody say, you say anti-abortionists don't care about people, but I'm involved with 4 charities and I give them money and I give them my time. I'm saying, great, do that. But is that really flowing from you from a value in yourself and a passion in yourself? Or are you ticking the boxes on a task list to make yourself feel better because something inside of you is telling you you're not good? And so being good then becomes a task list item where we'll do things, but we'll ultimately do it out of obligation, which will eventually lead to resentment and a lack of caring about the world around us. So if I do a homeless feed on Thanksgiving out of obligation, I get that bump of helping these poor people for a moment, but ultimately I begin to feel like I gave at the office. I did for those people what I had to do. And in your heart, then when something comes along, say that's like, hey, we're going to use our tax dollars to help these poor people. We say, no, you're not going to use my tax dollars to help those freeloaders. No, we're not going to let somebody come across the borders and access our health care because they're my tax dollars. That resentment grows out of our lack of self-love, not out of just flat out racism for people coming across the border. It's a lack of self-love that creates that feeling of me versus them in the first place, because I'm trying to find external ways to prove my value. And those people are coming to take away the external things that make my value. But when I love myself, then I start to evaluate what my passions are, and goodness starts to flow naturally through me. And I start to change the world around me in ways that are just inherent in who I am as a person. And I'm going to love doing those things. Those are going to be things that cause me to get out of bed and put my feet on the floor in the morning because I'm excited to do them. I'm not doing them out of obligation to prove myself a good human being to an angry God that likes to find reasons not to like me. I'm doing it out of a passion of my heart for a heaven and a universe that has created me with a beautiful purpose to change the world. And that's what I coach to. By the way, just let me take a moment to tell you, those of you on YouTube can see my logo for Reconstruction U there. I do emotional and spiritual well-being coaching for people that have found themselves deconstructing their belief system. Their identity is getting riddled. We're seeing culture around us just in a mess, and we're saying, I want to be a part of changing that. Well, let me suggest coaching with me and mentorship through Reconstruction U. This is a little bit of what I do to make a living, but it's also the best pastoring I've ever done in my life. I want to teach you to recraft that core identity story to start to say, I am good. I deserve good things to happen. And as our identity starts to change, we start to look at our mindset. Why do I react the way that I do to things around me? And are some of those reactions coming from mindsets that served me in the past but aren't serving me in this next season of my life? Then out of learning our mindsets, we start to look at how we navigate relationship and communication with one another. What are some tools that can help me walk into conflict better? Because conflict is good. Conflict is important in relationship, and we learn how to do that together. And then as we're learning to see our identity and our mindsets recrafted, we start to see that we are built for purpose, and that purpose is going to impact the world. So we start to look at, what is my vision of where I'm going in this next season of my life? And then as that vision starts to be crafted, we finish with impact. How can I be innovative and intentional? Use the 2 I's of Reconstruction U coaching, the innovation and intentionality, to take steps out of my passion to change the world. And so right now, over these next 5 days, I'm doing 5 days of Reconstruction. I'm offering 40% off. I'm offering a huge discount because a lot of people are worried about money right now. And so I want to offer you a highly discounted rate on my coaching so that we can see if this can be something that would help you. And you may not be able to afford the full rate at this time because we're all a little bit worried about money. So if you're interested, would like to know more, if you go to my website right now, pastor-paul.com, it'll show you how you can have a free one-on-one consultation with me, and we can talk about it. You can click on that link and schedule onto my calendar this week, and we can chat together one-on-one and see if there's something I can do to help you, how I can help you recraft that core identity story to become the human being you're supposed to be, rather than the human doing religion teaches you to become. So the damage that religion, cultural traditions, and households do to us is tell us that we have to change to be what others around us need to be because we're created inherently bad. And I want to tell you that learning to love yourself begins with creative steps to start to tell yourself a different story. I have an I am statement that I tell myself every single day, that I say over myself. And sometimes I find it hard to believe, but it says, I am, one of the things it says is, I am a person of significance. My voice matters. That's one of the ways I can get on here and share what's in my heart to share with you, is remind myself that this is an important passion and call of my life, to share my words. And so even when the Christian trolls come and try to tell me I'm this, that, or the other thing, I'm like, I remind myself of my core story. No, I matter. And when somebody tells you that you have to put a veneer on, just give it to Jesus. Just go to the cross. As Ellie says, just sing another worship song and act like it's okay. They are asking you to destroy your core identity and your core story and get your identity through a community of religion. And when that belief system starts to be shaken in that community, your safety that you get from that community, your value that comes from that community, your purpose starts to be shaken. And it becomes a very difficult decision to say, I'm going to walk in truth rather than in something that would cause my identity to be in jeopardy. So that's my spiel for today on day one of 5 days of Reconstruction. That learning to love ourselves is not only important, it actually is a command of Jesus. And evangelicalism has it wrong when it says you are not valuable and not good. It's not the story of the Bible, and it's not the story of heaven. So again, go to my website, pastor-paul.com. Right now, you can get a free one-on-one with me. We can chat about it and see if there's something I can do to help you. And if Reconstruction U, my coaching cohort, is a valuable thing for you, that's starting here in May, I will give you a 40% discount right now, because I realize a lot of people are struggling and a little bit worried about money at this time. And so I wanted to make this available to you. Thank you to Ellie. So, all right, I will listen to some questions, hear your comments. What are your thoughts? What have you been told about your value as a human being in your evangelical upbringing? What is deconstruction doing? Are you worried that you're losing your identity, that you're losing your value in the world because it's been based in your church and your religion? I would love to hear what you think. So if on TikTok or YouTube, there's my friend Ellie over there. Let me know where you're coming from. Job She 64 says, raised strict evangelical, been deconstructing for years. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, it's really good. You should be deconstructing because the belief system is not good. It's man-made. It's not based on the Bible, and it's very destructive to yourself as a human being. Honey Girl Sweetie says, give him money. No, I'm not saying give him money. I'm saying pay me for a service that I do through my for-profit work that I pay taxes on, just like everybody else does. And I'm given a 40% discount. And I'm not ashamed of that at all, because when you provide a service for people in American culture, you get paid for it. And by the way, when Jesus went into from town to town, people would give his group money to make sure that Jesus was able to do his work. And he had two women that were very wealthy who donated to his work. And people like say, well, Jesus never had any money. Well, then you don't understand that the Bible says Judas was stealing from the money purse. And if you don't have any money in the money purse and you throw a penny in there and somebody steals it, you're going to notice that it's gone. So Jesus had enough money that Judas was able to steal from the money purse without anybody noticing that the money was gone. So Ellie says on YouTube, I've been working on telling myself that I am still loved by God and okay apart from the church. Yeah, this is a struggle for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are saying, am I taking my children to hell by deconstructing my faith? Am I doing something wrong? Because we've been so inculcated with so indoctrinated with the religion that we grew up with. It does take some intentional work from time to time to recraft that story. But I promise you, Ellie, you're, even by making that statement, you're showing me that your heart is for God. Your heart is for right. You've just been taught, you and I and a lot of us have been taught, that that love for God was demonstrated by us going to a building 4 Sundays a month, not by being like Christ, but rather being Christian. And it's just not what Jesus taught. Hi, Smoke My Petty. Good to see you. Ellie says it was lonely on Easter, but I needed to stay home. Yeah, I got a couple of invitations to go to an Easter service, and I was just like, no way. I don't think I could go to church in a building right now, because I find it so abhorrent what is coming out of that church right now. And so I encourage everyone to walk in your own value and to know that the Spirit of God is in you, not in a building. And when Hebrews 10 says, let us not forsake the gathering of ourselves together. That was written in a time when it was illegal for Christians to gather in buildings. So Ellie says, didn't help that a certain senior pastor told me that I'm not welcome there, even on Sunday. Yeah, pastors do that these days. Peggy says, what's wrong with looking for a church that has the same value as you do? It's not easy. I don't despise anybody that goes to a church. My story is I founded a church myself that I wanted to craft with my values. And in America today, and in American Christianity, it's very hard. A leader in that church has to fight the norms that have become normal in the American church to keep that church focused on making a positive impact in the community rather than becoming inward focused. And I can tell you, at 10 years as a senior pastor, I fought as hard as I could to build a church that didn't look like every other church in town, wasn't navel gazing and inward focused. And no matter how many times I say, we're not going to be program focused, we're going to be outward focused, people would be like, yeah, that's a great idea. I love it, Pastor Paul. When do we have the women's Bible study? I'd be like, no, we're not going to do programs. We're going to go out and we're going to change the world out there and then come in and testify to it on Sunday. Great idea. When do we have the men's prayer breakfast and we talk about the pornography that we all watch? You know, when are we going to have the men go out and shoot something and have the women do some hand basket weaving? You know, there's such a norm in mindset of Christians today that when you get in that building 4 Sundays a month, it's hard to change. Ashley says, I was raised Catholic. She's over on YouTube. So my upbringing was different, but I've always felt like deep down, God loves me no matter what I call myself. That's right. Ellie says, good news is that so many progressive churches are still on Zoom. Yeah, we have an online Christian community gathering on a regular basis on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific, and you all are welcome to join us. Ellie says, what? How do you grow without the baseball diamond discipleship program? LOL. That's right. Stormy says, I'm so blessed in my space. Jamie says, Ashton Culbertson. Yeah, Ashton, I see the question. It's just not really worth answering at this point. This is my #1 church at the moment, says Stormy. It's the community I sit with and talk faith with. I'm so blessed by this space. Thank you. Stefan So says, also struggling to go to church in a building right now. Tay Nelly says, what's wrong with women's Bible study? What's wrong with women's Bible study? So there's nothing inherently wrong with women's Bible study. But first off, I think splitting Christians into genders is an antiquated belief that women and men have different capabilities. It is women's Bible study is based in the idea that there are women's ways of looking at the Bible and men's ways of looking. So it's inherently built in a misogynistic practice to begin with. But I've just found that little Bible studies like that again become very inward gazing. So I'm not saying women's Bible study isn't inherently wrong. You can do it all over the place. What I was saying is let's start a Christian community that actually does something to impact the world, not just gets together in a room to chew on stuff. Tay Nelly, I get she's saying, but women share the same experiences. I think we're equal, but women need support from one another. Oh, what do you guys think about that? I think it's rooted in a misogynistic complementarianism view that women are different than men, and therefore they, so we're going to teach men leadership, we're going to teach men shooting and beating things up, and we're going to have women have tea in a house. I just think those views of humanity don't serve us well. And most of the time, what comes out of a women's Bible study or a men's prayer breakfast, all of the common things of American Christianity now. Oops, sorry, TikTok, I lost you. Sorry about that, guys. Just the fruit is not good. Let me just say it that way. The fruit is not good. Can I say that? The fruit is not good. Ellie says, I think that's what I struggle with too. As a trans woman, I used to long to be a part of women's groups and craft sessions, cookie exchanges, etc. And now that I identify as a woman, I am in circles that are working to dismantle gender. Yeah, I think if we want to gather around interests, so instead of having a women's Bible study, what if we had a group built around common interest or common needs, rather than defining those in gender? Maybe we define those in some other way. In a progressive church, you wouldn't have to worry about misogyny, hopefully. I'm sorry, but I believe Ellie says, I feel sometimes that women need a place where they can deal with their experiences without being mansplained to. All right. As a male who sometimes struggles with the fluidity of all of that, I'll be honest with you, you may be right. But again, I would say let's build those around experiences and like-mindedness rather than gender. Am I still buffering on TikTok, guys? I'm sorry. Ashley says, I'm not here to submit to my husband. We are partners. That's my issue with gender roles in the church. Let me see if I can do something on TikTok here to fix this. No, I'm on the right. Stormy says, I think organized separation of teachings is flawed and shouldn't be a thing. Jamie says, you can't see me. Stefan So says, nothing wrong with a Bible study, in my opinion, as long as the intent to grow faith be more like Christ, but not check the box. I can live with that. I can live with that. I can just tell you, as 10 years as a pastor, I saw more negative than positive come out of Bible studies. Groups forming to be supported in healthy, trained ways is different. All right, I'll give you that. Smoke My Petty says, BRB, getting dinner on the grill. Nice. Can you guys hear me on TikTok? Ellie says, LOL, I used to want to be in the submissive wife role. Perhaps that's why I have some issues with BDSM now, LOL. Oh, Ellie, you're making us blush now. I think it's important in this season that we break down gender norms in church circles. Jamie, you still can't hear me on TikTok? I'm not sure what to do. Try switching between data and Wi-Fi. All right, maybe if I switch the Wi-Fi off. Sorry, TikTok, if I'm losing, I see I'm losing everybody on here. And I didn't mean to get on gender norms, by the way, because I'm talking about reconstruction here and reconstructing our identity and our beliefs. And I'm in what we're calling 5 days of reconstruction. So I'm going to be live every day. You can check on my YouTube channel. They'll tell you where those are, or on my website, pastor-paul.com. And if you go to pastor-paul.com right now, I'm offering a free one-on-one connection with me and a very special deal in my coaching. We're offering a huge discount, 40% off in my coaching, because we just recognize that it's a difficult season monetarily for people. And so if you've been thinking, I want to feel like I can be a part of change in culture, but I need to sort of do some digging deep down inside first, I can tell you my coaching has been life-changing for the clients I've had. So far, I've had over 75 clients over the last 2 years, and it's been amazing to see how life-changing it's been. So, Dear Christians podcast is here. Hey, how you doing? It says, what gets taught in these studies is the biggest sticking point for me. It's less about men and women getting together and more about enforcement of stereotypical gender norms. And Jamie's letting everybody know I'm on YouTube if we're struggling on TikTok there. Ellie says, I think part of it is still power. It's like working in anti-racist groups. It's not enough to break down racism. It's about making reparations for the wrong that has been done. Same with gender. Peggy says, do you promise not to swear? I never promise not to swear. I think cuss words keep religious demons and religious people away. Ellie says, which perhaps is why I still feel that women's groups should exist as a safe space, perhaps not women's studies per se, but a safe space for women. All right, you guys are making a good case against my case, so I can understand that. As long as we're not doing that separation to perpetuate gender norms, I'll live with it. And I can definitely understand why women would feel safer in a space with women. I guess so. My question, Ellie, then to you, and I'm not saying this antagonistic at all. You've just got my mind rolling now. So if there is a male like you who at one point, Ellie, you were male, but you felt drawn to things that were more female, or felt drawn like, and I apologize if I'm misunderstanding this, but you felt like there was a female inside of you and you felt drawn to be around females rather than male or male things. How do we make space for men that are in that situation? Or maybe that's a group all to itself. Maybe that's a safe space all to itself. I'm processing out loud. But interesting. You guys have brought an interesting topic here today. It's funny because I was working with a therapist that I've been working with for years and loved him, and we've had some great successes together. And I began to think, I need somebody more empathetic. All right, I guess I need to let TikTok go. It looks like TikTok is killing me. I think TikTok does this on purpose. So I'm gonna let TikTok go. Guys, go to my YouTube channel. If you go to my bio in TikTok, it'll take you to my YouTube channel and you can see me live over there. So I will let TikTok go. TikTok's been freaking out these days and makes me not very happy. So let me plug in my phone. I've got about 10 more minutes here, guys. I like the idea of a safe space, says Jamie. Yeah, I can understand that. And you guys have definitely convinced me that there's space for that. And maybe some of it is more so than Bible studies itself. Sorry, I'm trying to put some stuff up here. It is, does this not go in there? It is just the small group mentality of the church, and definitely the dividing of the genders, the gender norms and gender roles that come from complementarian beliefs rather than from the reality of there are some pretty freaking amazing women in the world who can lead much better than a lot of men I know. Ellie says, perhaps making it clear that it's a space where it's known that it exists for women and female identifying people. I don't know either. Yeah, those do get complex, and humans are nuanced, so it's interesting. Jamie says, I think when a church is in healthy relationships, we find a way to include those who are marginalized, like in the case of someone who feels more called to female spirits. But true friendship also provides safe space. Some of us need a friend or two, and some people like to have a village. All right, very good. All right, I won't make a religious edict against women's Bible studies. I'll just say be careful of what happens there. Because we can become religious on the other side. I see this from a lot of atheists that I know, that they become very staunch fundamentalist in their belief that there is not a God, and that anybody who believes there is somehow less than them. And I say that's just being a fundamentalist on the other side. Taylor says, this is Tay Nelly from TikTok. I'm intrigued because I'm deconstructing from my conservative Christian upbringing, and I have so many questions as I'm going through therapy. Thanks, Ellie. And Jamie says, but you definitely made me think about why we shouldn't have women's studies. Well, Taylor, go to pastor-paul.com and click on that link, and let's schedule and just have a quick chat together and kind of see what you're walking through and how I can support you in that. And by the way, if you go to my website, sign up for an account there, you'll get my newsletter. And if you love what I do, you can click on that support Pastor Paul button link and be a subscriber to help me continue to do this work. Peggy says, I'm the only woman among 7 men in a Bible study. Here is the one drawback. When men start to explain verses, they totally understand what each other are saying. I have to try and figure out what they are saying sometimes. Is that because they're men, Peggy, or is that because they just all come from the same background? Sarah says, I think safe spaces are necessary, but they have to be inclusive, which means having all people involved be open-minded, which has been where they fall down. Yeah, I agree. And honestly, sometimes those groups become exclusive to themselves, and that's when we have a problem. Oh, that's right. I'm going to be on a StreamYard broadcast tonight. I forgot. Oh, let me think I can't think of what it's called. I'll have to put it up on my website. But yeah, so if you sign up for an account on my website, oh, by the way, and my audiobook is available on there, my novel, Joseph Comes to Town. You can read it. You can listen to it on my website, an audiobook. Sarah says those safe spaces aren't the same as Bible study groups either. I don't think they should have enforced teachings either. Ellie says perhaps a space that is consciously based in feminine energy. Jamie says I always worry that groups like that turn into cliques. Yeah, you have to be. And when I was a senior pastor, I tended to encourage strongly that small groups have a finite period of time. Like, okay, you're going to do a study of the book of Hebrews. Why don't you figure out how you can do that over a 10-week period and then stop and let's see where we go next. Taylor says, I struggle the most with no longer having the peace of belief in the afterlife. Listening to Christians speak their rhetoric, it's almost like listening to my past self speak. Almost all Christians speak the same verbiage and buzzwords. So Taylor, I actually don't believe in the afterlife as what I learned as an evangelical child growing up, but I do believe that death is a transition to another form of life. So I do believe in an afterlife. I don't believe in an eternal conscious torment hell. Not only do I think the Bible doesn't strongly support it, but it also isn't logical. And I think God is logical. I think the divine is logical. But it gives it. So what my belief in the afterlife does is it gives a space for there to be justice as we transition into the next level of life, to the next phase of life. And it's just, we see it in nature all the time. And why wouldn't nature speak to what the divine looks like? That a tree that dies becomes a part of nature and grows into something new. And I think spiritually it's the same, that we are fragmented parts right now out of the whole of what is God in heaven. And when we die, we transition back into that hole. WHOLE, not HOLE. Jamie says, I just want a few friends or a women's group I can vent about my husband and my period. That's all. Okay, well, so men can't hear about periods? I know we can't relate, but you guys are trying to make me blush now. Taylor says, Ashley says, Taylor, I've struggled with that a lot too. I totally understand. Jamie says, Taylor, you're in the right place because we hate platitudes here. Taylor says, how do you consider yourself a Christian without believing in the afterlife? Because Christian doesn't mean you believe in an afterlife. Christian means one who looks like Christ. So Christianity is not based on what happens after you die. Christianity is based on what you do now. Psalm 27, I believe it is, says, I would have despaired if I didn't believe I would see the goodness of God in the land of the living. Jesus said, I came to bring life to the full. So Christianity should never have become about where you go to heaven. Christianity is about how you look like Christ today, and then how you carry that into the transition into the transition of the life that comes after here. Peggy says no eternal torment. Jamie says afterlife versus heaven. Sarah said, I had to fight so hard against my church. Oh, I guess you guys can read all these. So Ashley says the same, where I am too with my belief in the afterlife. Sarah says you got a gold star for the Bible study groups. Yeah, that's cool. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go. And again, if you're interested in working with me, like a one-on-one, pastor-paul.com is a place to go. And we can link and get a one-on-one together. And for anybody who's been thinking, I'd like to do a deeper dive into what my identity is now post-evangelicalism. What does an emotional and spiritual well-being look like now? How do I pursue that out? I have coaching cohort starting in May and another one in August that we're going to walk towards. And I would love for you to be a part of it. And right now, over the next 5 days, I'm offering a very special, incredibly low price with a 40% cut discount over the full price. So I would love, if you've thought about, I'd like to have some life coaching. I read these self-help books and then I go away and they don't impact my life. I can tell you that working with me has really impacted the lives of some people. And I don't say that out of pride. I say that out of just self-humility of knowing what I've walked through in my own life and how I've seen that I've had to recraft my identity after my belief systems were crushed. And after I started to realize that I had been lied to in my religious beliefs. So, yeah. All right. I love you guys chatting with each other. We could take this over to the community chat room at pastor-paul.com if you want, or we'll be back again tomorrow. Let's see. What time am I live tomorrow? Let me look at my calendar. Today is Wednesday. All right. Tomorrow is going to be at 7 a.m. Pacific. And I will be talking tomorrow about making mistakes makes us human, not sinners. All right, guys, bless you. Love you all. Thanks for talking about periods and other embarrassing things with me. I'll talk to you again soon.